20 years ago, a boy drowned in Crystal Lake because the camp counselors weren't watching him.
Friday the 13th, or better known now as Jason Universe, a franchise that, much like a volcano, is always seemingly active and ready to go at any time. With a new show series in production, a pretty good apple cider commercial, and probably one of the more intense HHN houses we've had in a while, I think we're on an upswing for the big guy. So for the holidays, I gifted myself the Scream Factory complete set with all 12 Friday movies. Wait, there's really only 12 of these things? They stopped one short? Anyways, I spent all last month watching and ranking these pictures, and I'd like to share my thoughts on the good, the bad, and the ugly of this franchise. So join me as I rank all 12 Friday the 13th movies. Friday the 13th Original. It's strange when the first movie is the black sheep of the franchise, because Friday 1 is the most different, with it being a kind of mystery, giallo style movie. Unfortunately, it's not done very well, with Mrs. Voorhees not even having a presence until the big reveal. Like, maybe we could have had her show up in the diner in the beginning or something like that. I'm not quite sure. It's just something to have her have a presence. Most of it being set up and then the final chase that starts and stops way too many times to count. And it seems like they had a cool idea at the end, but they didn't know really how to get there, because why after defeating Mrs. Voorhees does Alice go out on the water? It makes no real sense to me. So we're starting off slow with it being in the D tier. Friday, Part 2. This movie starts with a recap of Part 1, just to get everyone up to speed. It also shows what happens to Alice, just to tie it up real quick. Part 2 is a much shorter movie. In fact, it's the shortest one of the whole franchise, so it wastes no time getting to the point. This is our first of Jason being the real killer of these movies, but he's not quite there yet. He's still pretty human rather than, super zombie. Plus the iconic look isn't there yet. This is what we have as a sack hood Jason, my third favorite looking of the big guy. I like that it shows that Jason is already a local legend and strong enough to last after the 5 years of the first movie's happenings. And that he roams the whole Crystal Lake area, not just the camp itself. It also shows that he likes to have variety with the weapons, because we don't get to that machete right away. He uses a nice pick, barbed wire, even the back of a hammer before we get anywhere close to the machete. The ending jump scare is way better and it makes way more sense, so with that huge improvement, I'm going to give this one our first A. Friday, Part 3. Before we start, no, I did not watch this in 3D. Part 3 is technically Saturday the 14th because it starts the day after 2, but don't worry about that. You can tell they figured out the formula finally, where it's just a random assortment of characters getting killed by Jason. And I do mean random, because it's kind of a Scooby-Doo crew this time around, with characters that seem like they would never really hang out together, but the movie just wants them there in the same place for some reason. One thing I found funny was the biker's side plot. Like, what was the plan with stealing the gas? How did they find the teen's house so fast? They couldn't have followed them. The bikes were already wrecked. And none of them are packing heat? That's ridiculous. I've never heard of a biker that wasn't packing something. The kills in the later half are pretty good. They kind of save the movie a bit. And we do get the iconic hockey mask plus some cool music. But the ending is bad. We just do Part 1 again, but with Mrs. Voorhees' jump scare instead. Throw it in B. Friday, the final chapter. We're entering the first part of the Tommy Jarvis trilogy, as well as the final Jason the Guy trilogy. I love that they keep adding vacation homes onto Crystal Lake. Like in the first movie, you would think no one goes near that place, but no, they've been there the whole time, just a little out of view, I guess. I like that they have 3 different parties this time around. You got the family, the partying teens, and the guy trying to hunt Jason and take revenge, I guess? This movie's big thing was that it was supposed to be the last one, and since we still have 8 more to go, that clearly wasn't true. The ending with Tommy snapping and quote-unquote finishing off Jason is really cool, and if it was the end, that'd be fitting, but it's not, so it's a fine fake ending with lots of TNA in color and in black and white, as well as some cool kills, but I'm gonna stick it up in the B tier still. Friday, A New Beginning. Part 5 without a doubt is the most unneeded of the Friday viewing experience. Nothing here ever really gets followed up on. It is part 2 of the Tommy Jarvis trilogy, but that's all it really has going for it. The cast of characters is even more cartoony than before. The idea of a fake Jason could work, but it focuses a bit too much on Roy the whole time, so you're just sitting there thinking, he's up to something. I do like that he gets a cool mask with the blue markings to differentiate himself from the nightmare Jason following Tommy around. But he doesn't really act any different. It could have been the actual Jason and it would have been the same movie, I would argue. The ending with Pam's chainsaw fight was really cool, and Reggie running down the fake Jason with a payloader was actually pretty awesome. But it can't save this movie from being that other Friday movie that doesn't have Jason in it. C tier. Friday, Jason Lives. The final time we see Tommy Jarvis, plus we finally reach Super Zombie Jason. This movie feels and looks like your budget was a bit higher. That really gives this Friday a little bit of a more star treatment. The whole opening of Jason being resurrected Frankenstein style is off the charts cool. And yeah, sure the kills are a bit more goofy with this one with smiley faces popping up and credit card jokes, but that does help with distracting from the slightly less gore we're getting around at this point. Also, they're finally reopening the camp. Really, it's the first time we actually see the camp running at all in this whole series. The cops realizing they were wrong about Tommy and then going to the camp just to realize it's too late is actually a really nice touch. Plus, Tommy reading up and finding our first way to stop Jason is nice and makes sense that putting him back in the lake would sedate him. Overall, it feels like a movie that modernizes itself and had more than just teens getting killed in the woods. A tier. Friday, The New Blood. What happens when Jason meets Carrie? You get the new blood. Tina's our Carrie stand-in that has special powers to let her move stuff, see other people's deaths, and unfortunately for us, resurrect our sleepy pal Jason. This Jason is the best looking Jason we have ever seen. With or without the mask, it's my number one. This movie does take a step back though, with us having teens next door just so happenly being there for a birthday party. But it does work out because it gives our final girl some other people to bounce off of other than her mom and the doctor she came up with. I like that for the final scene, instead of having the generic final girl gets chased by Jason, instead Tina uses her powers to throw Jason around a little bit, which is kind of fun and makes it a little different. And the dead dad that Tina came back to, resolve her grief with, being the person who actually drags Jason back down to his slumber, is a fun ending. I like part 7. I know it is our first stop into Wacky Town and then it's going to get kind of crazy from here on out, but I think it actually is a top tier of the franchise. It's going to be getting our third A. Friday, Jason Takes Manhattan. This is more Jason Takes a Cruise than anything else, but that's still interesting, seeing Jason work in such a small confined space. I like that we get a retelling of Jason's backstory again in the cold open. Jason awakens again from electricity, so that's staying consistent. I guess since Tina is away from Crystal Lake, her dad had no reason to hold Jason down, so that's why he's not there, I guess. Anyways, this is one of the more classic Friday movies where Jason's just killing teens that so happen to be in his way after he climbs aboard their boat. The new final girl, Rennie, has some kind of connection with Jason because she also almost drowned in Crystal Lake when she was younger, so maybe that's why Jason got on the boat in the first place. That also might be why Jason doesn't interact with anyone else in New York. He just kind of walks past them unless they interact with him first. I really don't like how this ends with just toxic sewer water untoxifying Jason somehow. It doesn't really matter because this is another wacky unresolved chapter in the Friday canon. For being fun up to the ending, this is gonna get a low B, but like a really low B. Jason Goes to Hell, the final Friday. I don't know why this has the final Friday added onto it as a tagline when it clearly wasn't going to be. I also don't know where they were going with this one. It feels like they had a script just sitting around at New Line, and when they got the rights to Jason, they just shoehorned him in and added some Friday tropes on top of it. Because honestly, if this was a standalone movie, I think people would have liked it a lot better than they do now. The whole idea of Jason body surfing to different hosts is strange, as well as dropping new lore on how to defeat Jason by having a family member is clever, but it also just doesn't feel like something this universe really needs. And none of the possessed people feel like Jason. They kind of feel like they're doing their own thing, which isn't really that good. And the new character of Duke the Cowboy Bounty Hunter is way too wild even for this series with its wacky characters. I do however like the tie into the Evil Dead, even though it never really goes anywhere. And the brief Freddy cameo at the end is really cool since they're both under the same roof now. I would argue if you watch this as a non-Friday movie, you could have fun with it, but we do have to judge it based on the Friday franchise, and it's not the best. I'm gonna give it a D tier. Jason X. Our last stop in the Wacky Town Friday movies. Jason not only goes to space, but also to the future, the year 2455 to be specific. Long story short, Jason gets captured by the US military somehow, and through chaos and shenanigans, he and our new main protagonist get frozen into the future. And even then, with hundreds of years in between, him disappearing and Earth becoming inhospitable, Jason is still a well-known urban legend. Also, just saying, pre-Mecha Jason is my second favorite look for the guy. I like the brown tattered coat look. Jason having to deal with the future tech is fun and gives him a little challenge to overcome. Plus, a lot of the characters are tropey with common sci-fi stuff like the badass space marine and the cyborg people and stuff like that. And I think that gives viewers something more interesting to look at other than the common jocks and stoner types we keep running into in these movies. I like this one, but I do feel like it's not the best for an introduction into the Jason universe, so I'm gonna give it a B tier. Freddy vs. Jason. This isn't really a Jason movie, even if his name's in the title. It's a Freddy movie featuring Jason. It starts with a whole opening explaining who Freddy is and what his ambitions are, but not really for Jason. We don't even really get his backstory until about 54 minutes in. And I know it's because this is a movie for fans, but still, what about someone who stumbles upon this movie without any context? I think it's so unbalanced because Jason doesn't really have any major wants other than to be left alone and go home, which he was doing till Freddy woke him up and dragged him to a whole different state to start causing a panic. This also adds nothing new to Jason other than he's scared of water, which doesn't seem to be true, but who knows, I guess. Not like Jason really talks about his feelings that much. Both times they clash are really cool though, and I'm gonna be that guy. They both lose the fight, but Freddy wins the battle, just because he succeeds in getting people to remember him so he can go back and do his thing now. I would only recommend this to Nightmare on Elm Street fans and people who want to see every Friday film. C tier. Friday the 13th Remake. Not all remakes are created equal, some are better than others, and the Friday remake without a doubt is one of the best ones. Pretty much it's just the best of the Friday formula, perfected while also speedrunning parts 1, 2, 3, and 4. But it also adds new stuff to like the lore, like explaining how Jason gets around so quickly with the underground tunnel system. Instead of being teleporting super zombie Jason, like we got in the later movies. Also, I like that it's unpredictable of who survives at the end. No real final girl trope to be seen here. It keeps all the cool ideas from the first 4 films and trims the fat, because there's no way they would ever do a proper remake of the first film. So they just make it an opening credits flashback. And unfortunately, they even keep the tradition of the characters doing something pointless at the end, because why do you push Jason's body into the lake? It makes no sense, it's just so you can have the jump scare at the end. This is probably the best rounded of the series, that's why I'm happy to have it be the last in the A tier. So that's my final ranking of the Unkillable franchise, and as you can see, I enjoy more of the franchise than I dislike. But being honest, you can tell that the series is running on momentum like any other franchise. They had one good thing going and kept milking it till the cow went dry. So things just started to run on and on until they had to go to far extremes, and then it just got wacky. But I think if you had to show anyone this franchise, my top 4 are probably the most diverse. Because you have part 2, the more human Jason, then you get part 6 once he becomes Super Jason and becomes truly iconic, then you move to part 7, the first stop in the Wacky Town before it gets completely off the rails, and then there's the '09 remake, which is kind of like a cliff notes of the original quadrilogy, but still its own thing and works for more modern crowds that don't really like watching older movies. I hope in the near future we get more of the psycho hockey player himself, because with all the new monsters and madmen reaching for the crown, it would be nice to have the king defend his throne, you know what I mean? But until that day comes, all we can do is sit and watch Crystal Lake for any movement. I'm Dirk Dogma, and I hope y'all have a killer Friday the 13th. Thanks for watching.
So, you want to know the story of Splatterhouse, the new horror video game for TurboGrafx 16? They say he stalks the old haunted mansion. They say he's looking for his girlfriend. They say his only weapon against the maggot-eaten ghouls who took her is a 2x4. And you say you want to play this game? Splatterhouse. Only for the Turbo...
Jason! This is not the movies. You're not in Hollywood. This is professional wrestling. And you're going against one of the best and he's from Japan. Mr. Pogo,